What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Cricket Vision Plus and going over whether or not it's a good phone to buy in 2023. Now essentially, this is an entry-level Cricket branded phone that came out around the spring of 2022, and since then, a lot of other phones like it have also come out, but somehow at this point in 2023, Cricket is still selling this phone. And at this point, if you are looking for a more affordable entry-level device, the Cricket Vision Plus is actually a pretty inexpensive option. So we're going to be going over its specs and features to give you a better idea of whether or not it's the right phone for you. Now, if you do want to see the latest info on pricing and availability, definitely check out the link in the video description because this is always changing. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Cricket Vision Plus, we're getting a 6-inch IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and an 18:9 aspect ratio. So on one hand, even for more of an entry-level phone, definitely not the best display out there. But overall, for the more light, casual user, I do think it will get the job done. At only 6 inches, the display is a bit on the smaller side, but I feel like for the average casual user, it's at least large enough to give you a decent experience. If you're doing stuff like light web browsing, social media, maybe not watching a ton of videos, but maybe like a YouTube clip here and there, for that kind of activity, while again not really being the best ever, it will at least get the job done. And despite only having a 720p resolution, the image is pretty clear. So again, in general, if you're not really going to be consuming a ton of content, but you're still looking for a decent display for more basic use, what we're getting here is at least going to be okay. Now for storage, the Cricket Vision Plus is getting 32GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion. So on one hand, definitely not great in my opinion, but on the other hand, even at this point in 2023, unfortunately, I want to say the vast majority of phones in this price range are going to have pretty much the same storage, so it's not really anything unusual. Just keep in mind though, if you are downloading a good amount of apps, even with microSD card expansion, with only 32GB of internal storage, it's definitely not going to be the best experience, because in this day and age, with things like apps, the system, and just files in general getting larger and larger over time, 32GB just really isn't a lot of storage. So if you are in that situation where you do have a decent amount of stuff on your phone, then definitely keep this in mind, because in that case, this is probably not the best phone for you. On the other hand though, if you're really looking for a phone for more of the bare minimum, and you're not really going to be putting a bunch of apps on your phone or anything like that, then in that case, most likely, the storage here will at least be acceptable. Now for security features, with the Cricket Vision Plus, unfortunately this phone does not have a fingerprint scanner, but it does at least have Face Unlock, giving you at least one other option besides a pin to unlock it. Now honestly, I would have liked to see a fingerprint scanner here because I feel like especially when it comes to lower end Android phones, people typically prefer them. I mean, the Face Unlock on this phone does work decently well, I guess. So as you can see there, it's not terrible, but at the same time, fingerprint scanners do tend to be a bit more popular. So I feel like with this phone, it would have been nice to see that instead. But again, at least we do get Face Unlock, and it does work decently well. So I guess I can't really complain. Now taking a look at the camera setup here, with the Cricket Vision Plus, the front-facing camera is right up here on the bezel. This camera is 5 megapixels. Then on the back, we get a single camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. So in general, when it comes to the camera, definitely not really the best phone for taking photos, especially if you're doing it all the time. Maybe you're taking a lot of pictures for something like Instagram, for example, and you want to make sure they turn out really nice. On one hand, I do think the photo quality on this phone is at least okay, but first of all, it's pretty featureless. As you can see, again, there's no ultra-wide camera, no macro camera, so definitely a more basic camera setup here. And in addition to this, when it comes to photo quality, while I do think it is at least acceptable for more casual use, again, if you're taking a lot of pictures, you are probably going to want something a bit better, so definitely keep this in mind. But to give you an idea of what it can do, here's some pictures taken with the Cricket Vision Plus, and in general, I feel like some of these pictures are definitely nice, so it really just goes to show, even though obviously if you spend more money, you're gonna get a much better camera. If you get the right angles, even with a really low-end phone, you can get some decent photos. So if you are maybe more of a casual camera user, and you're really not taking that many pictures, in which case, of course, you don't really need a super nice camera. In that kind of situation, just keep in mind, if you really want to get a nice picture with this phone, especially with all the photo editing tools out there nowadays, this phone at least can do it. But of course, if you are going to be taking a lot of pictures, maybe you want a wider variety of features, or you just want really good camera quality in general, maybe taking photos is like a hobby for you. In that kind of situation, definitely consider spending a bit more and getting a slightly higher end device that has a better camera. But in general, for a really low end device like this, I do think the camera quality itself is at least acceptable. And if you're really not that concerned about it, then I feel like it's going to do just as much as you really need it to. Now, when it comes to RAM and processor, with the Cricket Vision Plus, we're getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A22 processor. So in general, definitely keep in mind this is not a very fast phone. So if you're going to be on your phone a lot doing stuff like mobile gaming, if you're going to be on social media a lot, for example, especially something like Instagram or TikTok that tends to have a bit more animation and stuff going on, you are probably going to notice this is definitely not a very fast phone. And in those kinds of situations, it's probably going to be a little bit slow and laggy. But that being said, in my experience, for more casual use for stuff like super basic web browsing, watching the occasional video from time to time and stuff like that, the performance is actually pretty decent. And I haven't had any issues for what I've done with it, which is granted, not really a whole lot, but in general, if you are looking for a device for more of the bare minimum, which is really what phones like these are meant for, then I do think you will be perfectly fine here. But if you get this phone expecting it to be fast by any means, and you're just going to be on your device a bit more, then I feel like in that case, you will probably be disappointed. Now, I did run a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 5, and here are the results I got. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of where this phone stands performance-wise. I seriously doubt this is going to be an upgrade for anyone, but if you have a really low-end device right now, and you basically just need to replace it with something that's not worse, then this is definitely a good way to tell. In general though, again, if you're really not going to be on your phone a whole lot, and you're really just doing the bare minimum and not a whole lot else, then performance-wise, this phone, while definitely not being fast per se, is still going to get the job done decently well. Now for the battery, this phone has a 3500 mAh battery, so on one hand it's not terrible, but keep in mind this phone definitely does not have the best battery life. So if you are in that situation where maybe you're not always around a charger, but you need something that's actually going to last all day, in that kind of situation, even in this price range, you can definitely do better. But if you're maybe around a charger a decent amount and you don't really have your phone away from it that often, then with this phone, you should at least be okay. Now one thing I do want to point out is that with this phone, since the back does pop off, it kind of looks like it has a removable battery, but keep in mind it doesn't. I don't know why they designed it like this, but if you pop this off, so like this, as you can see, the back comes right off. And here's the battery. Again, it's definitely not removable, so don't try to take it out or you might ruin the phone. But in case you're wondering, the slot for the microSD card is right here, and the slot for the SIM card is right here. Again, I really don't know why they designed it like this. But yeah, in case you're wondering, that is how you get to the microSD card and SIM card. Now for the software, the Cricket Vision Plus does have Android 12, which is at least decent, especially considering this is a really low-end phone that's about a year old now. So while it would have been nice to see Android 13, honestly, even at this point in 2023, not very many non-Samsung phones even have Android 13, so I'm not really surprised here, and I have seen several phones in this price range that still only have Android 11, which is even worse. So if you do want a software that's decently newer, but maybe you don't necessarily care about having the latest version of Android, then you should be okay here. Another thing to keep in mind is that unfortunately, the Cricket Vision Plus does not have NFC, which is honestly not surprising, but just keep in mind, if you do like to use Tap and Pay, you are going to want to get something else because unfortunately you can't use it with this phone. But that being said, keep in mind, if you do want a phone in this general price range that does have NFC, both the Cricket Ovation 3 and the Cricket Icon 4 do have NFC, and in I want to say a lot of different ways. They're pretty much the same as this phone, if not a little better. So again, if you do want NFC, I would definitely check out those phones too. Now taking a look at the overall design, definitely more of a basic, old school kind of lower end phone. It has kind of a boxy look on the screen with the slightly thicker bottom bezel and the almost identical bezel at the top, as well as having a front facing camera in the bezel and no water drop notch or anything like that. On one hand, it definitely doesn't look bad, but on the other hand, you can definitely tell just by looking at it. It is a lower end phone with a kind of more retro design, at least as far as smartphones go. It looks like it came out in like the early 2010s or something. But that being said, when it comes to aesthetics, in this price range, I feel like most people probably don't care too much. And again, overall, I don't think it looks bad. It also is decently slim, and combined with having a slightly smaller display, it definitely makes the phone a bit more compact. I know a lot of people are looking for something that's a bit smaller. At this point in 2023, I want to say the average phone has like a 6.5-inch display. And while I personally really like that, I know to a lot of people it can be a little bit more on the bulky side. So if you are looking for a more compact device, then you might like the design here. The phone is made entirely of plastic, which is probably no surprise. And it does have an interesting texture on the back that doesn't pick up fingerprints too easily. So while not looking premium or really unusual in any way, the Cricket Vision Plus does have at least a decently nice design. But in conclusion, is the Cricket Vision Plus still worth buying in 2023? Now, on one hand, this phone really does have pretty much everything you need for the bare minimum, and combined with having Android 12, which is at least a decently newer software, if you are looking for a super entry-level device and you're really not going to be doing a ton with it, then it's definitely not a bad option. That being said though, even within Cricket, if you really want to maximize the features and overall value you get for the money, I feel like it's definitely not the best option. There are phones like the Cricket Icon 4 for example, or the Cricket Ovation 3 that go for pretty much the same price, and those phones are a little bit better in my opinion, and definitely have a few better features too. And again, those phones do have NFC, which at this point with tap and pay becoming so much more widely used, I feel like it definitely is an advantage to think about, because even if you don't use NFC right now, it's always nice to have the option to in the future if you change your mind. And then if you're willing to spend a bit more, I mean, this phone retails for $99. As of the recording of this video, Cricket has some sort of sale where you can get it for free, but keep in mind the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G for example, which is a much better phone, to the point where I don't even want to actually directly compare the two. That phone currently retails for around $199, which is only $100 more than this phone. And if I can remember right, Cricket also does offer that phone for free too under certain circumstances. So the point is, on one hand, if you really just don't care and you need a super basic device for, again, really the bare minimum, then this phone is definitely a decently acceptable option. But that being said, if you want to maximize the actual value you're going to get for the money, with so many phones that are just so much better than this, becoming more and more affordable as time goes on, I feel like in general, this phone is really rarely going to be the best choice. Now again, if you want to see the latest info on pricing and availability, definitely check out the link in the video description, because of course, by the time you're watching this, things could be a little different. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.